Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into a topic that hits home for literally all of us today. Tariffs.
Ooh, tariffs. Sounds exciting.
Well, you sent over a ton of articles and research on this, and it looks like some of these tariffs from the Trump and Biden years could have cost us, get this, maybe even $2,400 a year each.
Wow, that's a serious chunk of change.
Yeah, no kidding. So to help us break it all down, I've got an expert in economics and trade policy with us today.
Happy to be here.
Okay, let's start simple. Can you give us like a quick Tariff 101? What are they and how are they supposed to work?
Sure. Think of a tariff as basically a tax on stuff we buy from other countries. So when you buy that imported whatever, it's going to be more expensive.
Thanks.
And that's supposed to make people buy American-made things instead. The whole idea is to protect American businesses and jobs from, competition overseas.
Right, give American businesses a fighting chance.
Yeah.
But our sources suggest it's not always that simple, is it?
You got it. It's not just slap on a tariff, problem solved. It's way more complicated than that, and it can impact everyone, businesses, and regular people like us.
Okay, so let's talk about the tariffs we're looking at today. We're talking about tariffs on a lot of stuff coming from China,
Yeah.
and then more tariffs on goods from other countries too. What's the overall picture here?
The timeline matters a lot here. When Trump was president, he wanted to put some big tariffs in place, like maybe even 60% on things coming in from China.
Whoa, 50%, that's huge.
It was a big deal. And he's also thinking about 10, 20% tariffs on stuff from a bunch of other countries, too. Not all of that actually happened, but it was a big shift in how America approached trade.
So then what about when Biden came in? Things change much.
Something shifted, but the Biden administration actually kept a lot of those Trump tariffs going,
Really?
especially the ones tied to this thing called the Phase 1 deal with China. It's a pretty complex agreement. But the gist is that both countries agreed to do certain things about intellectual property, buying agricultural products, and yep, you guessed it, tariffs. So we've had these tariffs in place for years, which is why understanding what they do is so important.
Gotcha. So we've got the background. Let's get into specifics. One of our sources goes deep on this example with washing machines. Seems like a real-world way to see how tariffs actually play out.
Totally. And it shows how those ripple effects we talked about, they can have some consequences no one saw coming.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So back in 2018, they put this 20% tariff on washing machines coming in from other countries. You'd think, okay, American washing machine makers are going to love this, right?
Makes sense to me. Make the imports more expensive, people will buy American.
That was the plan. But here's the twist. The prices of imported washing machines went up, yeah, but guess what? So did the prices of American-made ones.
No way. So even if you wanted to buy American, you were still stuck paying more.
Yep, and studies found that shoppers like us ended up eating over 60% of that extra cost from the tariff.
That's wild. Why would American companies raise their prices if they didn't have to?
Well, think about it, supply and demand, right? Imported machines got pricey, so suddenly there's less competition. American companies could raise prices and not lose too many customers.
Clever, but sneaky. And didn't our sources say those price hikes eventually calmed down? Did everyone just stop buying washing machines?
Nah, people are smarter than that.
Oh.
Some folks said, okay, fine, I'll buy American, and jumped on that initial price difference while it was there. Some people waited for prices to settle down, and probably a lot of those foreign companies selling washing machines, they probably lowered their prices too. Even if it meant less profit for them, they wanted to stay in the game. It just shows you how much stuff is going on in these markets, especially when you're talking about global trade.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces. That's why I love these deep dives. So we've seen how tariffs can mess with prices in some unexpected ways. But what about the money? The government's got to be making bank off these tariffs, right?
Well, yeah, our sources point out that since we put these tariffs in place, U.S. customs duties revenue, that's the money the government gets from tariffs, has gone way up. Like $257 billion between 2018 and 2024.
Wow, that's a lot of cash.
Almost 44% of all the money customs takes in just from tariffs, so it's a big deal for sure.
Okay, so more money for the government, and it's helping protect American businesses. Sounds like a win-win to me. Or is there a catch?
Haha, there's always a catch. That money's got to come from somewhere, and it's not magic. It's coming from the companies importing stuff. Their profits take a hit. But more than that, it's coming from us, the people buying the stuff. We're the ones paying those higher prices.
So it's like a sneaky tax, right?
Hmm.
The government's taking in more, but it's really just coming out of our pockets.
Exactly. And even though tariffs might give the government a little boost in the short term, it's not like they're creating wealth out of thin air. They're just moving it around.
Makes sense. And long term. Can the government really count on that money? Is it sustainable?
That's where it gets even trickier. Remember how we talked about everyone adjusting to those washing machine tariffs? Well, people do that with everything. When prices go up, people might buy less stuff from overseas, find other options, or even change how they spend their money entirely. So that money from tariffs isn't guaranteed forever.
So it's not as simple as tariffs equal more money, right? There's a whole ripple effect to consider.
You got it. Which brings us to the bigger question. What were those tariffs supposed to do in the first place, and did they even work?
Right, zoom out for a sec. What was the whole point, and did it actually pan out?
The arguments for tariffs usually boil down to protecting American industries. Get more manufacturing happening here in the U.S. and not rely so much on stuff from other countries.
Okay, that makes sense.
The idea is if you make those imported goods more expensive, people will buy American-made instead. More jobs, stronger economy, all that good stuff.
So did it work? Was there this big boom in American manufacturing?
It's hard to say for sure. Some industries might have gotten a little boost, at least for a while, but whether it really changed things for jobs and the economy overall, that's a whole debate.
Yeah, I can see how that would be tough to measure.
Some studies even say those tariffs actually hurt the economy overall because there's less trade happening and everyone's paying more.
Oof, yeah, that doesn't sound great. And we can't forget about what it costs us, the shoppers. Didn't you mention something from the Tax Foundation, like those Trump-Biden tariffs could be adding $200 to $300 a year to the average household's expenses?
Exactly. And that's just an average. For some people, it could be way more, depending on what you buy and how much of that stuff comes from other countries. That's real money coming out of people's pockets.
Yeah, no kidding. So maybe higher prices, maybe inflation, fewer choices for what we can buy, and maybe not even the economic benefits they promised. Starting to feel like nobody wins here.
It's messy, that's for sure. There's no easy answers with tariffs. They're a blunt tool, and you never know exactly what's going to happen. Lots of unintended consequences. It's all about trying to find the right balance.
Speaking of unintended consequences, remember that $2,400 number we talked about at the beginning? Our sources say if Trump had gotten all the tariffs he wanted, it could have cost us, the shoppers, something like $1,500 to $2,400 extra every year.
Whoa, that's serious money.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And think about this. Consumer spending, the money we spend on stuff, drives something like 70% of the whole U.S. economy.
That much.
Yep. So if everything suddenly costs way more, that could really shake things up.
So less money for people to spend, less spending overall. Maybe the economy slows down.
All very real possibilities. And it's not just about the direct cost of the stuff either. There's inflation too. That makes our money worth less and puts a strain on everyone's budget.
And if businesses are paying more for stuff because of the tariffs, they might have to raise prices even more, or even worse, start letting people go to stay in business. Just keeps going, right?
Yep, it's all connected. One little policy change can have a huge impact, even if it seems like it's just about one thing. That's why it's so important to understand how it all works together.
Wow, this is giving me a lot to think about. Before we move on to our final thoughts, I want to check in with you, our listeners. What's standing out to you so far? Any questions coming up? Take a second to think about what you've learned. This isn't a lecture, it's a conversation. We want to hear what you think.
I agree. Always good to take a step back and think it through for yourself.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive with something to really ponder. We've talked about how complicated these tariffs are, what they might be costing us, and how the results have been kind of a mixed bag. So what are the alternatives? How else could we help American industries and get the economy going strong without putting so much pressure on everyday people like us?
That's the question, isn't it? And economists and people making policy are always trying to figure it out. There's no easy answer, but there are other ways to approach this.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of alternatives are we talking about?
One thing we could do is focus on investing in things like education and training, making sure American workers have the skills they need for the jobs of the future, and making sure our infrastructure is up to snuff, roads, bridges, all that. That can make our economy way more competitive.
Gotcha. So instead of trying to protect American businesses by, blocking competition, we make them stronger so they can compete on a global level.
Exactly. It's about playing to our strengths and focusing on innovation, not just trying to shut everyone else out. That might actually hurt us more in the long run.
So what else could we do?
Another strategy is to work on trade agreements that open up new markets for American stuff. Make it easier for us to sell our goods and services to other countries.
I see.
But it's got to be fair. Everyone needs to be playing by the same rules. Those agreements can bring down barriers and create opportunities that benefit everyone.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
So working with other countries, not against them. More opportunities for all.
you got it. Global trade is a powerful thing. If we get it right, it can help everyone grow and prosper.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We dug into tariffs, looked at what they were supposed to do versus what actually happened, and even brainstormed some new ways to think about economic growth.
I always enjoy these conversations.
So, what does this all mean for you, our listeners? The bottom line is, tariffs are tricky. They might bring in some money for the government and protect some American businesses. But they can also cost us, literally. Higher prices, less choice, and all those unexpected consequences can ripple through the whole economy. We hope you keep thinking about this. The world's getting more interconnected all the time, and the choices our leaders make about things like tariffs, they affect all of us. So, keep learning and keep asking questions.
That's it for our deep dive on tariffs. Thanks for being with us.